Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, and we have the Dream Team tonight, and I mean the Dream Team. First and foremost, we have my longtime colleague, George Eichorn. Welcome back to the big show, George.
It's a pleasure to be here, Scott. I'm ready for the action.
There you go, and of course, David Levin. What's up?
Hey, guys, how y'all doing? Really glad to be here tonight. Ready to talk some sports
and you're numbered by two big major Detroiters. So you talk about a Floridian and two Metro Detroiters. So let's bring it on. First of all, George, let's give David Levin a little bit of a history of the two of us. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, Scott and I go back a few years, just a few. Try double digits.
About 40.
We were together on the sports talk show on the ABC-owned and operated WXYZ radio in Detroit. And it was the number one sports talk show hosted by a guy named Loudmouth superfan Ron Cameron. And Scott and I were producers, and then we broke off from that guy. And together with Phil Guastello, we started the Sports Exchange on WCAR in Garden City and later on WBRB in Mount Clemens, Michigan. And we had some great times, Scott and I, reporting on sports, and over the years we've covered everything from Super Bowls to playoffs to World Series to everything you can imagine under the sun. So we've had a great relationship, Scotty, and I appreciate coming on your show once again as I know that you've got a great show and a good thing going there down in South Florida.
Well, like I said, George, you and I have been together the better part of 40 years, and I'm just so glad now we're having more opportunities to do it at least once a week. So I think before we went on, one of my favorite assignments was when we were working over at the State Fairgrounds and doing this broadcast, and Dick Night Train Lane, I was on site and you were in the studio, and what a wonderful time it was to be able to produce a show on site with Dick Night Train Lane, a Lions legend for sure. So, David, that's what you're dealing with tonight, man. Two big-time Metro Detroiters. It don't get any bigger than this. So, and of course, George and I were very close.
I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to. I don't know whether I am excited or now I'm scared because you guys have so much history together.
Don't be scared, young man.
Yeah, there you go.
I like this guy already. He's calling me young man. I appreciate that.
Well, hey, listen, since we like to talk a lot of baseball, one of our favorite people, George, is definitely Ernie Harwell, and you can tell David how close that we were with Ernie, right?
Yeah, we were very fortunate to get to know Ernie real well, Scott and I. We had the chance to visit with him at his condo complex and have lunch with him many times. We also were able to talk to him at the ballpark prior to the broadcast with the Tigers, Lions, Red Wings, Pistons, of course. We covered all those teams, but it was especially fun covering the Tigers, Scott, when we had a chance to see Ernie Harwell and Paul Carey before and after the games. Just a true gentleman, a great announcer, cut in the same cloth that guys like Vin Scully and Joe Buck and Jack Buck and Kurt Gowdy and guys like that. So, Ernie Harwell was just a true pro, a gentleman's gentleman, and like Scott said, a good friend of ours, both of us.
Yeah, well, in fact, Ernie Harwell, you and I spent my birthday together, so over in Novi. That's how neat that birthday was, being able to spend it with. Ernie treated me like his own nephew anyways. That's the kind of relationship he had. When he was close to you, he didn't care what he said because, that's where the trust factor comes into play. So now that we have all this little Detroit nostalgia, Mr. Levin, George, before we go on to some baseball talk, let's talk about the Detroit Red Wings, that they ended up finishing fourth in the draft lottery for being the worst team in hockey. How hard are fans taking it back in Detroit? Again, you're looking for that franchise changer, but Steve Yzerman's certainly trying to downplay it.
Well, yeah, Stevie has taken the high road, and I don't blame him. He's got a lot of years ahead of him working with the NHL and the commissioner's office and what other things are going to happen, obviously, down the road. So he's taken the high road. But the media and the fans are just livid, Scott, and they are just so upset right now that this happened. The Red Wings, of course, the lowest, I guess you could say, that they would finish was 4th, and that's exactly where they ended up. They didn't even get the second rung or the third rung, let alone the first rung. And here what you're doing is you're playing games because just, whatever Gary Bettman and I don't even know if the owners and the players, I don't even know who agreed on this whole thing. But having the lottery spot open for one of the playoff contenders ended up getting the, one of the teams that's going to be eliminated in the first round, of course, will get a shot at that first overall pick as they have a second lottery planned. I guess once all that first round action is done and the several teams that are eliminated will have a shot again at a lottery to get number 1. But to answer your question, Scott, yeah, here in the Motor City, everybody is quite upset about it and not happy that the Red Wings are going to get the number 4 and not the number 1 pick.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that the NHL lottery is that flawed, and this was a classic case of it. So now that we've got that out there, let's go on to the great American pastime. And Mr. Levin seems to go ahead and write about it. David, before you get into some of the key points, why don't you let people know what your baseball involvement is?
All right, well, I'm leading off. I'm stepping into the batter's box, so here we go. George, now that we have seen MLB release their 60-player pools for all 30 teams, do you think this helps perennial losing teams? From what I've seen, these clubs are getting a lot younger, so they're looking at more prospects. Is that going to help teams like Detroit or Miami or San Diego or Kansas City, or does it still help the establishment like the Yankees or the Red Sox, the more dominant teams in the league?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag for me. Okay, yeah, it's gonna help teams that are looking at their future. They will have a chance to play some of these kids, obviously, with the expanded roster. But the bottom line is the teams with the most talent on the major league level, a.k.a. the Yankees, the Astros, the Dodgers, etc., I mean, they're still going to rise to the cream of the crop. Now, you could catch lightning in a bottle, don't get me wrong. If Detroit catches lightning with this new outfielder named Riley Green, for example, or, a prospect from San Diego catches lightning or something like that, I mean, that's always a possibility, but the bottom line is still going to be the teams with the most talent and the big league level already, that they currently plan to obviously start the season with back in March when it was supposed to start, are probably going to be teams that you're going to want to, beat out to obviously win the shortened 60-game season.
Okay, I subscribe to a theory because I cover the Marlins for down here in Florida on a daily basis. And just like the Tigers and other teams that are developing, there's plenty of young talent to be had. Detroit's got Torkelson, and the Marlins just brought in Max Mayer, who they may actually put out there at some point out of the bullpen, which I'm totally against. Do you subscribe to the idea, though, that because of the season you're going to see stranger things happen? And we know that there's changes to how they're going to play the game, and there's the DH, and there's regional play and whatnot, but how off base am I with that?
Well, it's going to be a strange season. There's no question about it. I mean, they're doing things that they never would do before. You mentioned a few of them, the DH and the extra inning, starting a guy on second base, starting in the 10th inning if there was a tie, obviously after 9. There's a new rule about the make-up games in rainouts, and you're not going to make up the whole game. You're just going to pick up where you left off. A lot of this stuff they have to do, of course, because of the shortened time frame. But to me, obviously, it's still going to be an asterisk kind of season, all things considered. I mean, because, like you said, there's just so many different things going on, and things are not going to be the same, obviously, way shorter than a full slate of games. So I think what you're saying is we're still going to have fun watching it and enjoying it, those of us that love the national pastime, but you're going to see so many different oddities that would probably not happen in the we could have guys hitting 400 this year, which would be the first time since Ted Williams? I mean, you're going to see some strange things. You're not going to have a 20-game winner. There'll be 0 20-game winners, of course. from the pitching staff. So there'll be a lot of weird things going on this year, but it'll still be fun. We'll enjoy it, don't you think?
I think we enjoy it, and I agree with you. And by the way, Scott, he just knocked out 3 or 4 of my questions with one sentence. But no, I'll keep on. I'll keep on going. I appreciate the fact that you and I are thinking on the same wavelength. This is going to be a sprint, and one of the announcers for the Marlins was on one of his social media accounts and said, "There's no marathon to this whatsoever." So, are you excited about the fact that it's a 60-game sprint and everybody it can be anybody who wins this thing, or are you worried that the establishment or the way that baseball is played with intricacies and strategy is being taken away?
Oh, I don't think the strategy. I mean, there's some things that'll be taken away. Obviously, you're starting pitchers because 3 weeks is not going to be enough time for them to ramp up for the so-called spring training version 2. So the starting pitching, that's going to be a huge factor because guys are probably only going to go 4 or 5 innings at least to start. Until they build themselves up. But I still think that. To me, it's better than nothing. But I think the thing that's looming in the background, and I think you guys, down in Florida can attest to this, I mean, this COVID stuff is not gone away. And we've seen players already from Colorado and who was it, the Phillies? There have been teams that have been hit. Tigers had one player, they're not saying who, and one staff member.
Right. You're saying the Marlins, they're not saying somebody who was affected. They're not telling us who it is.
I mean, there's still a possibility. This season could get shut down. I mean, and that goes for hockey and basketball as well. I mean, it's the unknown right now. So, I mean, even if you could plan all you want, for the 60 games and the playoffs and the, World Series, but the truth of the matter is if something unfortunate breaks out in the sense of COVID expanding, I mean, all bets could be off. Don't you guys agree?
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. COVID-19, to me, I was on, we had our show with Motorman and Rude Dog today, and Rudy Reyes and I talked about this very thing, that COVID-19, you talk about the animal that we have, the reason why things have escalated here, and they will all over, is nobody's wearing those face masks whatsoever. I mean, you have to put your face mask up whether you like it or not. And yeah, the numbers are staggering. Think about this for a minute, okay? Let's not forget about Florida. Do you guys realize that there's been over 500,000 for the death toll around the world? Did you know that up to this point? I mean, that's staggering. It is.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's terrible.
So, yeah, COVID-19 to me does present a lot of interesting wrinkles to what we're talking about, many of which, George, you've already mentioned to begin with.
Right. George, let me ask this real quick. Would you be upset if, we just took a stand and said, we're not playing any sports this year, that this is too, it is an eyesore that we're not getting rid of, that it is too costly, it is, it will affect families, all these things. We're seeing major league players that have decided they're not going to play this year out of, fear for health of themselves and their families. How much would it affect you if they just said, "Hey, we're just going to do it with sports for the rest of the year because it's not worth it"?
Well, you got a good point there in the sense that it's not a priority. I mean, sports and entertainment is more of a luxury right now. I understand, though, there are so many jobs connected with it, but a lot of those people are not getting called back because we have no fans. So we don't have the hot dog vendors. We don't need as many parking lot attendants. I mean, we don't need as many the scoreboard will still be operated. That's not a good thing. But you know what I'm saying? All the people that are employed, it's going to be so different. The bars are becoming a huge issue. So you can't really encourage people to go to the stadium bars and watch the game and being in close contact because obviously we're finding out that COVID is spreading, and that could be one of the ways. It's well, not one, but it sure is one of the ways. I can
guarantee it's one of the ways here in Jacksonville. Honestly, I can guarantee it's
Well, I tell you what, to put a clamp on it for the whole year, I guess I'm not in favor of that. I would hope that we'd still be able to do it, but I'm not so sure now after some of the things that have happened in the last several weeks and the spikes.
Hey, Scott, excuse me for a minute because I am going to jump around just a little bit. Because we're starting to talk about COVID. Adam Silver was on record saying that this was something that they needed to do and that we needed to essentially start to be able to live with this situation. I don't know if you saw and I'm paraphrasing what he said, that this is something that we're going to have to learn to deal with, that we need to bring the masses together. And by the way, this is in Orlando, where Florida is, basically bursting at the seams. That this looked more like a money grab than anything else, that he was doing it because the NBA was losing money. Are you surprised at that? And because other commissioners have taken a much harder stand that health and safety was more important.
I'm not totally surprised. I don't think he's being greedy. I mean, he waited a long time, he and the owners and the players, to map out this plan. I mean, the bubble concept is a decent one. Right. I don't know if Orlando is the best place to have that bubble, but he's obviously doing something a little bit more different. The NHL is going to go with what they call 2 hub cities, probably, maybe one in Canada and one in the U.S., although that's not been determined. I think Silver is trying to control everything as much as he can, but again, there's already some players that don't want to play. And there's going to be some people that staff members on certain teams that probably aren't going to be happy. You got Scott and I talked about this. You got some of the older coaches, head coaches or assistant coaches, could be very leery about coaching. And I don't know. I guess I don't look at it more of a money grab as trying to have a controlled environment. But I don't know if he can be successful with that. I really don't, because it's going to be hard. I mean, if you try to have a curfew, these guys are grown men. Come on. You don't think they're going to want to have some fun times after a game or on their off day or with their wives or girlfriend? I mean, it's going to be hard for them to control that kind of stuff with curfews and stuff. And I don't know. They're trying, but I guess I don't mean to waffle on this, but I give them credit for trying, but I'm not sure it's going to hold up okay.
Gotcha. But getting back to baseball, because of the changes, how possible is it that a team comes out of nowhere, like the Tigers, the Marlins, the Padres, and they make it to the World Series because it's a 6-game season? Anything can happen. And if they do, is the season tainted? It's like you talked about the asterisk. So can you see something like that happening?
Well, I think it could definitely happen. I mean, Washington was not doing very well. Remember last year at the get-go, the Phillies were doing pretty well, and I think then the second half they faded. So, yeah, any year in Major League Baseball, you have teams that get off to good starts, teams that don't get off to good starts at all, obviously, and then some are obviously, and many of them are just in the middle. That can certainly happen where a team such as the Marlins, Tigers, Padres, a team that wasn't destined to do anything this year, a Kansas City Royals or somebody like that. I mean, you just don't know. They could do that. If you catch lightning in a bottle, the Tigers went 35-5 in 1984, but again, that was a stellar team. That was an unbelievable team what Sparky Henderson had. That was the best season, obviously, ever in Detroit history that they got off to a 35-5 start. But I think of that only in the sense that, Scott, you'll remember this. Mm-hmm. Sparky used to say, Sparky, what was his line about? Well, you got to wait for 35 or 40 games before I can tell you what kind of ball club I got.
Oh, yeah.
And so now, if a manager says that you got to wait 35 or 40 games, there's only going to be 20 games left in the season. So all I'm saying is that you will get a very good indicator. But like you said, there could be some teams that catch lightning in a bottle could go get off to a roaring start.
Do you think, we talked about this is the asterisk question, essentially. The records really don't matter. Like you said, I do believe there'll be at least one or two people that challenge 400. You're not going to, I don't think you're going to see anybody win more than 7 games. The bullpens will become more important to teams this year. The roster will start out at 60 and it's going to be pared down over the weeks. Does this season really matter? From the standpoint that, yes, we want to see baseball. But when we look back on this 10, 15 years from now, aren't we going to say, gee, why did we even have this season?
Yeah, that's a possibility. There are going to be a lot of skeptics. There's no question about it, because if you're a purist, you don't want to have something like this on the permanent record. It's going to look so weird. In fact, I don't even know, they might even suspend a lot of those awards that they give because of what you just said, like Cy Young Award. There could be a suspension of those awards by the baseball writers. I'm not sure about that. But anyways, you're right. It could be looked upon negatively, but if they can pull it off together successfully with fan interest and with guys not getting sick or going on the injured or, unable to play list, I guess you would call it, because of the virus, there's potential that it could still go down as an exciting year. But there's no question about it. Like we talked about, it's still going to have that asterisk because it's not a complete season.
Dave Ross, the Cubs' new manager, was asked today what he felt about that, and if there was a chance that the Cubs would be playing in the World Series, would it be, an asterisk, or how he felt about that? And his response was, if there is a way to get a title, I want it. I'm hoping that's the same kind of mentality that players have, but I'm also hoping that there is this natural instinct that says, but I got to make sure I'm safe first. I agree with you that this is going to be the oddest season I think that we've ever experienced. And there's been baseball strikes, and there's been other, 9/11, and there's been other things that have impacted baseball over the years. This, without a doubt, should be probably the oddest, strangest, most discussed season that probably in our lifetime.
Oh, there's no question about it. I think you're right. It's going to be very, very unusual, very, very difficult to comprehend. And we haven't even talked about the scheduling, where you're still having, you're only playing teams from your division, plus the other leagues, like division, I guess it's called, same division.
Right.
And travel's going to be cut. Travel's going to be, curtailed a lot, obviously. So, come on, the Dodgers aren't going to play the Mets, and the Yankees are not going to face Mike Trout and the Angels. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to just be so strange, and so peculiar about this year that, it's just not going to even feel the same to a lot of fans that are used to having, the rivalries outside their own division. Which there are still a lot of those in baseball, as you and I know.
Right. Let me ask you this, too, and this falls in line with that. I'm a purist of the worst kind. I don't want the designated hitter. And, I've been on several of Scott's shows talking about how, I want to see the pitcher hit, and I want to see strategy and whatnot. But this is just too weird for me. We've talked about the fact that, there'll be players that are going to challenge 400 because that's just the nature of the business. How does baseball recover from this? This isn't just, a 60-game schedule put in place here. There's a lot of bickering back and forth between the players and the owners and the league. And, I want this and I want that, and a bunch of crying and shouting and screaming. This is going to leave an indelible mark. How does baseball recover?
Well, that's a good question. It's going to take a long while, I think, because it was terrible what was going on during a pandemic across our country with all kinds of other issues going on, and then we had civil unrest going on, and here are these big shot millionaires arguing over money again, owners and players, and back and forth. It certainly cast a black mark on the game. There's no question about it. Recovery is not going to be easy because let's face it, right now, the only thing they're going to be able to judge on are the number of listeners on a radio broadcast, the number of viewers on television or cable, or interest on serious radio broadcasts of the games. All I'm saying is you can't count the attendance. I guess one other thing you would be able to count is what kind of interest as far as souvenir sales and things like that. Mm-hmm. But as far as the fans in the stands, of course, they're not going to be able to use that as a gauge. So it's going to take a while, because really until they get back into full swing, if they do next March, April, that would be the true indicator, I think, of whether the fans are truly fed up or whether they're going to still support baseball like they have in the past. And you bring up a good point. I mean, it's damage that's been done to the sport, and damage that's been done to the fans, the loyal followers, just by acting this way and not being able to resolve the issues regarding the length of the season.
I think one of the biggest things and it bothers me because I live in a town where there is minor league baseball, and it's good minor league baseball, is the fact that there's not going to be any of it this year. I know that they're also retracting the 40 teams. This is a mess. The Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp is a fairly well-established team here in the Southern League, and is the Marlins AA affiliate. So I've had a chance to see Sixto Sanchez and Edward Cabrera, who are their top pitching prospects, and J.J. Day was supposed to play here this year. We've seen the Mesa brothers, players come through. The fans are taking a hit at every level with this. Do you think they come back? And I don't think it's another situation like it's 1994, and we have to have a home run race to challenge to bring fans back. I think people are going to be really bitter, especially with the fact that the economy is so poor and they can watch the games as a family and at home and enjoy it that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to predict what actually is going to happen as far as the bitterness goes and the fans. Baseball has always been a family sport. It's always been the sport of the summertime. Right. It's been the sport of, the relaxed atmosphere at games. I mean, it's just a different type of, event. And I'm with you on that. I really, really feel bad about this minor league, the minor leagues being canceled. This really, really irritates me as well. And I'm glad you brought that up about Jacksonville and having a good minor league minor league team. I feel sorry for the fans in the Detroit, Erie, Pennsylvania, and the team in Toledo, Ohio for the Tigers, the Mud Hens. I mean, and all across America, because it's just part of the fabric, the summer fabric of America. Whether you're going to a ball game in Green Bay, Wisconsin for the minor leagues, or Jacksonville, or you're going to a game in Peoria, Illinois, wherever it is. I mean, you feel part of the game and you feel connected. And now all of that stuff's been eliminated. Plus all these players that you're trying to develop in your farm system and on the fields and the backfields, if you will, from spring training, you've lost so much contact with them and so much of their training. It's such a setback, for everybody. But again, I really feel I really feel bad for the minor league towns just as much as I do for these big league cities and their fans, because I know how much the fans love their teams, whatever city it is in the minor leagues.
Right. Scott and I have talked about this before. I cover football too, but baseball is my first love. My dad and I would go to minor league games as a kid, and there's that connection that you have. Like you said, it's a summer sport where dads can take their sons and daughters, and it's a family affair, and it's cheap, and the affordable family fun is what the Jumbo Shrimp use as their mantra to get people out to the masses. Minor league baseball is not going to recover from this either, are they?
No, it's going to be tough. I mean, I wouldn't say they're not going to recover, but it's going to be difficult because whether it's baseball or football, you don't have so much of the minor leagues, but you got obviously the colleges that are really taking a beating right now. I mean, millions and millions of dollars. Universities like Michigan and Alabama and Texas and UCLA and USC, just go right down the line. I mean, college sports.
Florida and Florida State are taking a major hit too, and those are major baseball teams.
Well,
college teams as well.
Of course.
Well, don't forget Florida Atlantic either. Florida Atlantic, a smaller school, is taking a hit.
True. That's right. Yeah, they're taking a major hit.
Yeah, you're right, Scott, because they rely so much on the football revenue, of course.
Oh, yeah.
So, football and basketball, as we all know, are the main revenue. Men's football and basketball, obviously, are the main two revenue producers. Some cities, of course, up Boston College and Notre Dame do well in hockey and things like that in hockey for some towns. But you're right. The main two sports, football and basketball, are hurting right now with the universities. And taking it a step further beyond minor league baseball and into the colleges, into the G League for the NBA. Of course, it's not a big moneymaker, that G League, but I mean the developmental leagues for the and of course the minor leagues for hockey too. Don't forget all the hockey that was halted in Canada and across Europe and in the United States. They never did finish the junior league, the junior A hockey, and all of those European leagues. I mean, everything just shut down. We lost a lot of revenue with those teams, and a lot of revenue in the junior world championships, and were all canceled and stuff like that. So obviously, it's been a devastating toll on everything in America and Europe and Canada. But hopefully, we'll bounce back once we get this thing under control.
When you look at both sides, this has been a tennis match, or actually a tug of war back and forth. Bob Manfred has had his side with the owners. Tony Clark's been there with the players. They're bickering back and forth. I could call it other words, but this is still a family show. Who's more to blame? And while there's culpability on both ends, ultimately, this is about millions of dollars while the economy is shrinking. So who do you put the blame on with this?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think they're both at fault. I mean, the players you could call greedy, but the players had an agreement, obviously. They had a signed contract, but that was based, again, on a full season. So this whole business of prorated salaries became such a touch point that the owners made multiple offers to the Players Association, multiple times to try to reach common ground. I think it's mostly the players' fault. I think so. I think the owners have tried various ways, techniques, so they expand the playoffs. That was, so that's not going to happen. But they did go along with some of the things like the DH and the 10th inning man on seconds and some of the other rules, the expanded rosters. But I think basically the players look more greedy. I think they got more egg on their face right now, to me, than the owners do. But that's just my opinion.
Okay. When you look, this has nothing to do with what we just discussed. But I'm going to ask this question anyway because I've been curious. You look at the game now and the way it's played, not the way that we watched it, not the way Scott or you or I watched it as a kid. Why is it better than it's ever been?
Why is it better than it's ever been?
Yeah, why is it better now than, say, when we were kids? Or how about this? Why is it better now, or why is it worse now than when we watched it when we were younger? I'm being nice here, okay? No, that's why I questioned you, because I don't think it is better. I mean, the athletes are stronger. They seem to be more powerful pitching and catching and fielding and hitting and all that. So, I mean, but I think the pure essence you've lost of the game and the beauty of it, and overtaken by the greed and making money and getting endorsements and this whole commercialism that's crept into sports and obviously our country a long time before this. Doesn't make the game as innocent and to me, and as appealing as it used to be. And there's basically explosion of games too, available on television, and you don't even have to go to the games anymore. You can watch all the games on TV. Of course, and Scott and I growing up, that was never the way.
And I understand
neither was me either. It was what, the Saturday game of the week.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kurt Gowdy, Joe Garagiola, Tony Kubek,
Right.
Saturday NBC game of the week, Bob Costas. Then you had Monday Night Baseball with Keith Jackson and Don Drysdale and Bob Prince, and you had Euchre from Milwaukee, and you had Howard Cosell for a while, Jim Palmer on Monday Night.
You're speaking my language, because to me, that's the purity of the game.
Yeah, and now you got ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Now, that's been going for a long time. I enjoy that, but I enjoyed it better with Joe Morgan and John Miller than I do right now.
Oh, God, yes.
But you've gotten away from that. But, again, baseball's not the only one that's gotten away from that. You can get every game of every team anytime you want on television. But as far as the fan experience, they treat it more like a circus atmosphere. I mean, the NBA especially, and Scott, you know that, going to a Piston game, that loud music they play, and every time out they got some silly contest, throwing stuff into the stands, dancing girls, dancing guys.
They tried to make it the minor league experience. How about that?
Yeah, acrobats.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just there's so much going on. It's so busy, that you're getting away from what we grew up with the pure essence of sport. And don't get me wrong. I mean, some of that stuff is fun. I mean, on the scoreboard and things like that. But they like I said, all of sports. I guess I'm venting for all sports have gotten away from their pure essence, but especially baseball. Well, thanks. Scott, you on board?
I'm here, just absorbing the conversation.
Scott, ask him the no-hitter question.
All right. Well, you brought it up. I'll let you go ahead and use that as your finale.
All right. We had this discussion last week, George. Maybe you can help us out. We were talking about the runner on second base.
Trying to shortcut it for Thursday.
To start a game. I'm sorry?
Trying to shortcut it for Thursday when we bring Stuart Hack back on. Go ahead, hit Eichorn with it.
Right, exactly. Okay, we're playing extra innings, and the runner starts on second base. But there's a no-hitter. Is it still a no-hitter if there's a runner on second base?
Yeah, but it's not. It can't be a perfect game, though.
I brought that up too, but we weren't sure.
No, I don't think they're going to credit the guy with a double. I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know how they're going to score that. That's a good question. Fielder's choice. There you go. Fielder's choice. Got the second base on a fielder's choice.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Did not help.
You know what, Scott? Scott, that's a question for Tom Gage.
Yeah, it probably would be, or Lynn Henning. By the way,
yeah. Maybe Tom has some insight into something like that. But your friend, Baseball Hall of Fame writer for the Detroit News, Tom Gage. I'm just kidding. But that is a good point. But I think it would still have to be a no-hitter. I mean, because the guy didn't reach second on a hit.
Right, but it's just not a perfect game.
Well, no, the perfect game would be out the window, right? Because
I'm just saying that. But we debated this for 10 minutes the other night, honestly, trying to figure out how they would score this.
Yeah, David's just trying to use this show so that he can not do his homework on Thursday. We bring back Stuart Hack, so we figured to get your opinion. Nice job, Levin.
Eichorn's answering it's right, then I don't have to do anything.
I know, exactly. That's why I let you go ahead and present the question yourself. I know, listen.
I don't know if it's right. That's the problem.
Well,
all right.
Well, but George,
I'm still going to do my research.
Well, yeah, but he's getting an answer out of you, so he can just go ahead and fuel his research with listen, I know how both of you operate. Okay, I've gotten to know Levin real well, and George, after 40-some-odd years, if I don't know you real well, for a man that was stood up in my wedding over at Miller Park, my goodness, really? Okay, I'm okay.
That's right.
Yeah, so, all right, David.
All right, you're on, Scott.
All right, the baton has passed over to me. All right, George, let's talk about that sprint versus marathon. What does Major League Baseball have in common with the NFL? Laughing.
I don't know yet, because the NFL still wants to have a full season, Scott.
Well, here's what they have in common, George. Okay, Yeah, exactly. Do you think I was going to make this easy, so ridiculously easy? For the first time in my lifetime, the Major League Baseball and the NFL will probably both be running sprints and not. Whereas NFL is accustomed to running a sprint, Major League Baseball will be forced to do the same thing. That means all games matter.
I'm almost got.
Oh yeah, gotcha. That's the word you're looking for.
What's that?
All games matter. That's a good point.
All games matter.
Yep. Whether it's 16 or 60. Yes.
Yeah, why? Hey, you think I've had all this time just thinking this stuff up while you guys are having an incredible banner. Yeah, I had to leave a few things out there for me, but no, all games matter for sure. So let's talk about the fans a little bit. You know, there might be at some point, I don't know whether fans will be allowed in, but, you know, let's just say hypothetically they do, depending on certain parts of the country. Would you see 20 to 30%? I think that the Chicago teams are talking about trying to get them in at some point, depending on where this pandemic goes. Could you see fans in any given stadium during the course of this abbreviated season?
Could I see the fans entering baseball gates, you're saying?
Yeah, whether it's a small percentage or not.
Well, I don't know why not. I mean, Talladega, wasn't it, where they tried to get, like, some of the fans in
5,000,
at the NASCAR race?
Yeah.
Yeah, and even though they had a rain out, the next day they still have to come back the second day. But they're one of the few that tried it so far. Golf is not allowed it yet. So golf, PGA Tour.
Right.
In fact, we're very disappointed in Detroit coming up this week. We have the tour stop and we have no fans allowed. So to answer your question, I think that possibly, it could happen later in the season. Not right now, but maybe in another month or two they might take another look at it. But they don't have much time because obviously they want to get this thing done by the end of September.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
I will say this, guys, they're talking about this in Miami as well, which is, I'm trying to figure out why. Because they're shutting everything down, but they're still talking about trying to have at least 20 to 25% of the fans in the stands by the end of the season.
But what are you judging 20, 25% of the stands with the Marlins? Come on, they don't draw anybody anyways.
Okay, yeah, I know, but maybe that's 4,000 people, but still that's 4,000 people that shouldn't be there.
And don't get me wrong, the Miami Marlins are growing on me, being a longtime Detroit Tigers guy, but the Marlins are growing on me a little bit too. I've spent some time at Marlins Park. It's a beautiful place. Perhaps not the best.
My job is done here.
What's that?
My job is done here.
Oh yeah, why? Because I'm.
I think if they're going to do it, they have to pretty much decide after a month of the season because, like I said, or maybe they'll do it for the playoffs. Think about that. Not the regular season, but they'll start doing the fans for the playoffs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think the Tampa Bay Rays will have to worry about drawing anybody for the playoffs because they don't anyway. So if this is a night where I can go ahead and take a couple of shots, I'm definitely doing it. Okay, but the Tampa Bay Rays don't draw anybody in the playoffs. So what makes you think they're going to do it during this time of the year? But go figure, Rays. I'm sure you'll play in front of somebody instead of nobody.
Definitely.
But I could at some point, which leads me to my next point. George, have you had a chance to watch any Korea baseball organization at all?
No, that's a negative, sir. I have not watched any of it except Bernie Smilovitz, a sportscaster in Detroit, always shows highlights a couple days during the week on his sportscast. He'll show a home run.
Yeah, I've actually had a chance to watch some KBO. And I've really been intrigued by some of the players that have come out of there. Eric Thames, the Brewers came out of there. Matt Williams is currently managing there. He was the former Diamondbacks third baseman and Washington Nationals manager. And I find it interesting that they've had cheerleaders there, and they've had cardboard make it look like you have fans just to try to create it. But they're actually thinking about bringing fans back as early as July 3rd. Do you believe that Major League Baseball is taking note of a lot of the things that have taken place over at the KBO?
Well, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're taking notes of that because they'd be silly not to. Even though it's in a foreign country, I mean, basically it's something that they should be able to take a close look at and see what they could possibly emulate here in the United States. So, yeah, I agree. I mean, they'd be foolish not to look at stuff like that. Certainly their scope of things is very limited this year with just 60 games. But, I mean, you never know. I mean, if this thing doesn't get knocked out, we could have a similar situation next spring again. We don't know that about the virus. So all I'm saying is that, yeah, I think that would be a smart idea to observe what goes on. And have you guys heard anything about the Japanese league? Are they going to start up?
I haven't heard anything.
I have not heard. I haven't heard anything whether they're going to.
Yeah, that's a Premier League, as you guys know. I mean, the Korean League, and Taiwan League is good too, but the Japanese League, yeah, I didn't think they started up yet either. No, but there's guys. Hey, listen, they can try a lot of different things this year, but without selling tickets to fans, it's still not going to be right. It's still going to be, not the same to me to watch games.
Well, I'll tell you what, the KBO is cleaning up on the exposure that ESPN's giving them. When you're desperate for programming and you're going to South Korea to get it, but so be it. Your buddy Dixon Machado's out there playing, so you never know. Maybe that's his ticket back to Major League Baseball. So you have some American players that are out there. And I've enjoyed it. Now, I don't think the defense that these guys are playing is great, but just to get an idea how baseball is played and how the ESPN announcers are doing it now, which leads me to one of the few things David didn't ask. Thankfully, he left a little bit out there for me. Just kidding with you, Levin. Okay.
I tried.
No, it's okay. David, I'm kidding with you. It's all fun. But let's talk about remote announcers. Okay, I know a lot of the announcers won't be traveling, so you'll see your local guys at their respective home ballparks, but not on the road. What are your thoughts about that, George?
I'm not so sure I like that idea. I mean, the guys, I guess, well, first of all, think about the airplanes. What are they going to do? They charter planes. They have their own planes, some of these teams. So, I mean, usually your play-by-play color guys, they get to go with the team anyways. So are you saying that they're too much at risk? Well, come on. Every player on that plane is going to be sitting next to somebody else, either a player, coach, or staff member. So I don't understand the big caution for the announcers themselves. Okay, now if the announcers had to travel commercial and they were afraid that they might catch something on a regular Delta flight or United or whatever, that's a different story. So I guess I'm a little bit fuzzy about what's the big significance of leaving the announcers home. That being said, if they don't change that, which it doesn't sound like they will, I see no problem at all because, God, you and I remember the days of Ernie Harwell taking a ticker tape and guys like Ty Tyson and Harry Heilman, former Detroit Tiger announcers from way back when, they had to recreate a broadcast reading this score from the ticker tape.
Oh, yeah. Well, Ernie,
so, I mean, it's been done before. They will have the advantage of a television screen and replay the guys when they're doing their games remotely on television or radio from the if they stay home, I mean, and are doing an away game. So, I mean, I don't feel too sorry for them, but I'm not clear about why this big precaution for the broadcasters not traveling. I'm still up in the air about that. Yeah. You guys too?
Yeah, but you know what, George? Take note that NASCAR is actually doing it, and at least Fox has Mike Joy, and they have Jeff Gordon doing it remotely from their respective areas. So, again, baseball's in a situation where you're looking at other sports that are currently ongoing, and who knows, the way things are going now, you never know whether remote announcers could be a wave of the future like these Zoom calls are. You just never know. With technology spiraling out of control. But NASCAR has done a lot of things where every sport will give you ideas how to do things in the future. And NASCAR has done it real well with Mike Joy and Jeff Gordon. I think Jeff Gordon the other day was over at the Fox studios out in Charlotte, North Carolina. So as long as you have your monitors and everything you need, I think describing the action with all due respect is probably one of those things that just you get used to anyways. Now, granted, you don't have the interaction with the drivers in the garage, and like baseball, you don't have the clubhouse interaction when you're on the road, so there are certain idiosyncrasies that you're not going to definitely get. But gosh, guys, we're looking at trends here, and some unusual, unprecedented trends that nobody ever visualized could ever happen before COVID-19. But again, you guys touched on it. You have the extra innings, man on second base, the universal DH out there, and all these different crazy rule changes that are one and dones. Like my old dates used to be one and dones until I got the right one. But you get the drill.
Good save.
God, Levin choked up over there, didn't we?
I think
you don't know what to say. Look at this.
Fantastic. So
fantastic. Thank you, Dave.
I'm just going to let it go.
I'm not going to sure you will.
No, I haven't been paying attention to the broadcast, but I know what you mean. Golf has had. Jim Nance hasn't been with his partner, Nick Faldo, has he? I don't think. In the same studio. I think they've done some remote stuff, plus they've done some at the golf course too. But you're right, NASCAR is the one that's kind of been doing the disjointed remote broadcasts, which I don't know what the heck that's all about. I mean, why not fly Jeff Gordon to Talladega, unless he doesn't want to?
And that's a possibility.
Well, that may.
That we don't know that. Yeah, it could be a possibility. Well, what's his name? He's no spring chicken anymore. Who's the play-by-play guy?
Mike Joy.
Mike Joy. Yeah, he's been around a long time.
Yeah, I think
so. He might not want it. He might not want the grind and the chance to pick up something too. So, I don't know.
You can't blame him for that. I don't blame anybody for that.
No.
Well, Mike Joy might fall into that.
It's just as crazy walking outside the door to get your mail and you're wondering, well, did I breathe something in? It's dynamic.
Mike Joy might fall into that category where you're over 60 and you don't want to take a chance. Whereas Jeff Gordon didn't worry. But I think that's a decision that I don't think it's their decision. I have a feeling it's Fox right now just playing it safe. Because think about all the ESPN programming that I watch on a regular basis. They're all working from remote locations, and nobody, let's face it, nobody has that comfort zone about going anywhere. I don't have it either unless I'm here in the studio or at home. I mean, unless I go to Subway with a mask on and just to get my footlongs and put them in the refrigerator. I mean, let's face it, we have the second wave that is about to hit all over the place. That's going to throw everything out of whack, which indeed goes back to the point that you guys emphasized earlier, that whether sports is not important, and obviously we'll reel that in a little bit. So, every sport could take a little bit from here. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with the NFL. Are they going to do remote announcers? David and I had two teams to worry about, but it seems like the Korean baseball organization is setting a tone for no fans, bringing back. NASCAR setting the tone for the announcers, and every sport where, how it was, George, we grew up in this business, we're taking a little bit from this guy, a little bit for that, and make part of our style, and it looks like sports is doing that in their own different, unique way.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. I think that it's going to be very interesting to see how this thing plays out, because we're, like I said, we're venturing into the unknown. We haven't done this kind of broadcasting before and coverage, so it's going to be interesting to see how it exactly plays out. I mean, you got some sportscasters here locally in Detroit. They're doing everything from their home. They're not even going out right now to the studio or to their assignments. Some of the ones in Detroit here are just, working out of their house, which is just crazy for me to understand, but they're getting all these Zoom meetings set up with athletes and players and coaches and stuff. So that cannot continue. Well, especially now with baseball starting up at their spring camp or summer camp, whatever you want to call it.
Right, I find.
So I mean, yeah, go ahead.
I find myself using Zoom, on a lot of networking calls. Before I knew anything about Zoom, I only knew about Zoom when I was on the interstate with a NASCAR mentality. And all my wife did was just put her tablet in her hands and just looked at the tablet and said, oh, my goodness, there we go again. But, Zoom is definitely something that now I have a networking group right now that I go to every Tuesday. And this guy here is planning on actually using Zoom permanently to set up the one-on-one. So, and he gets a total of about at least up to 40 people a meeting. This guy warns Drucker has it really, really right, and and he has a successful networking group. But when you put things in perspective, this is just the way new things are, whether we like it or not, whether it's announcers and so forth. And I've noticed a lot of things at ESPN. You have to pay attention to everything that's really around you to find out how they're doing it, so you can realize that many of us never thought we could work from home, but guess what? We're forced to do it whether we like it or not, so you might as well get used to it. And that's pretty much how we've been forced to handle it.
That's true, yeah.
I mean,
there's a lot of things that are changing.
I know that your job, George, you work as an essential situation, isn't it? So why don't you... but before I'll let you promote it a little bit. So how do you want to summarize what we're talking about when we put sports in perspective about where we're at now?
Well, obviously, sports is not the priority that a lot of some people had thought it was. We realize that now going forward. And we also realize that, like we talked about earlier, that some of the damage has been done. We've seen some greedy players and greedy owners and greedy commissioners and unable to really get a grasp on where they should be going with their season. I would say that the NFL probably has done the best job, but you got to remember the NFL and college football are the furthest away from starting right now, but they're running out of time too. Camps should be opening. Of course, the NFL lost a lot of their, off-season training in their camps and headquarters cities. College football, they've lost a lot of games, a lot of spring practice, and the spring game they have has been canceled. So football's affected also to a certain degree, but especially the most affected have been, like we talked about earlier, baseball, basketball, and the NHL, hockey. So I think that in summary, I think that we are in uncharted waters. I'm looking forward to the baseball the baseball season, I should say, even though it's going to have a giant asterisk by that World Series winner. But you know what? That's not going to matter because the champagne will be flowing, the rings will be made, the trophy's going to be hoisted. There's still going to be a champion. They hope, obviously, Major League Baseball hopes. So it's going to be interesting to see. And, of course, the other sports as well will be very interesting to see how they work those out with the NBA and the NHL.
George, let's talk about college baseball. I don't think we've given it as much time as I want to, so we'll dive into it for a couple of minutes here. Obviously, Major League Baseball had a 5-round draft, and they'll do, the unrestricted free agents and so forth. And so do you feel that college baseball has been majorly overlooked in this whole thing, where you have seasons where these guys, I think, will retain a lot of their eligibility next year, which is good, but then you're going to have a logjam next year with the new people that have been recruited? I know that. Yeah, they're in a tough situation, Scott.
I feel bad for teams like the Tigers because the Tigers were banking on, obviously, with the worst record in baseball. They wanted to have, as many draft picks as they could. And now, like you said, when it was limited to just 5 rounds,
right?
5 or 6 rounds. Yeah. So then you had to start scrounging for free agents, or offering, I should say, contracts to the others on free agent status. Yeah, I feel bad. I mean, the College World Series, we got a taste of it here in Michigan. We loved it because the Michigan Wolverines went to the finals last year, losing to Vanderbilt. So it was really exciting for the state of Michigan because that's not too often where we have a team, whether it's Wolverines. I don't even know if the Spartans have ever gotten the College World Series, but the Wolverines, it was a long time coming. And so I feel sorry for them because, obviously Omaha does a terrific job hosting that every year. I feel bad for the kids, the Little League World Series, Williamsport, Pennsylvania, as we know, and the Junior League World Series in a city called Taylor, Michigan, every year. So I feel bad for college baseball, but you're right. Hopefully they can make it up somehow next year. Like you said, Scott, extend that eligibility to the kids. I know it's affected everybody, the high school kids as well. that were seniors or that juniors even trying to make an impression upon their colleges and, getting scholarships for college. So it's just a ripple effect. It's unfortunate, but, hopefully they'll be able to recover.
All right, well, obviously the Detroit Tigers picked Spencer Torkelson. How excited are Detroit fans about what they have to look forward to with Spencer, knowing a lot of people feel that he's a five-tooled prospect?
Yeah, he has good pedigree. He's got a great college program he's coming from. Alan Trammell scouted him a lot, the Tigers' assistant to the general manager. Alan Trammell, of course, Hall of Fame shortstop. He spoke very highly of him. And, of course, the Tigers, they felt, obviously, that he was the number one guy. So the kid said he loves pressure. They did an interview with him, I saw, and he says, pressure? He says, hey, that comes with the territory. He seems like a very confident kid, well-groomed, well-behaved, if you will. He's surrounded by a bunch of athletes in his family. So I think it's a good pick. They need a power hitter. They need more than one power hitter in the minor leagues. So it was, I think, a good choice. Let's just see if he can come along and live up to those expectations.
Miguel Cabrera has been down a bit the last 2 years. I'm wondering if he's the type of person that can actually benefit by this shorter season. Certainly injuries have taken a toll on him as well. But, Miggy has had time to get in shape. I know he's training here in South Florida. What type of year do you think Tiger fans are looking for from Miguel Cabrera?
Well, but, that's a two-edged sword, Scott, because don't forget they're going to get very little time off.
Right.
So, Miguel's the kind of guy that Rod Gardenhire is going to have to give him days off occasionally because of his age and because of his, injury past that he's had the last few years. And I did not get to Lakeland, but I heard good things out of him in Lakeland, that he did look in the best shape that he has in a number of years. I know you've heard the same things, and that could be nothing but good news for the Tigers, because they could certainly use a healthy Miguel Cabrera in the lineup. There's no question about that. I mean, the power that he packed for those years that they went to the World Series and those years they made the playoffs under Jim Leyland for so many years, they certainly could use that again. The problem with Cabrera is that he had nobody helping him out except for Nick Castellanos in that lineup, batting in front of him or behind him. And now the fact that they went out and got a couple of guys, as you know, they signed from the Minnesota Twins. These guys are 20 home run guys. So hopefully they'll surround Cabrera now with a better lineup, and that will help them as far as, maybe getting more out of Miguel this year. Certainly, to be honest with you, it can't get any worse than it's been the last couple of years as far as his power stats go.
You mentioned Ron Gardenhire, final year of his contract. He only has 60 games this year. So do you think that because of COVID-19, that buys him another year?
I don't know. That's a big question mark. Of course, if you compare it to the Red Wings situation, Steve Yzerman went ahead, and I'm comparing apples and oranges, obviously, but with a guy named Jeff Blashill, he's giving him another year. Al Avila might do the same thing, because like you mentioned, it is a short year. I'm worried about, Rod is up there in age. I'm hoping that obviously nothing happens to him, and he's got a veteran coaching staff here in Detroit. And basically, I'm sorry to hear about two Minnesota Twin coaches already have stepped away due to their health concerns about COVID-19. The Twins lost two coaches, which I know Rod is obviously friends with, guys over there on the Twins. So I'm hoping that nothing like that obviously happens to anybody. But I know he's getting up there. I know he sees that his window of opportunity as a manager is closing. He's already stated that he will be going nowhere else after he leaves the Tigers. But you know what? They may say, come on back for one more. obviously this was a very short season, and he might just do it. Scott, that's a good point you bring up.
Yeah, you talked about Riley Green, so give me a little bit more. I know he's a heck of a ball player, but do you have any more information about Riley Green, about why Tigers fans, can look for? We all heard about Casey Mize, but the Tigers need bats. I think their pitching will be all right, but Riley Green intrigues me.
Yeah, Riley Green, I don't know too much about him. I know that he has shown some signs of life. He's been the Tigers' top draft choice now for a couple of years. He hasn't made it up the ladder, if you will, but he's only 19 years old. I mean, some people want him to go up the ladder real quick. Well, that doesn't always happen, okay? But he's one of the top prospects, as you said, from the 2019 draft. I think he was the 5th pick overall that Detroit made. And basically he got as high as West Michigan, which is Class A in the Midwest League. But he had some good numbers. He's showing some power. He's not as powerful as Torkelson, I don't believe, as far as, hitting the long bombs and that sort of thing. But the Tigers are very high on him. He committed to play college ball at the University of Florida, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe he did.
I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah. And he's from Orlando. He's a Florida kid. But the thing is that he is on the 60-man roster that they announced. Well, actually, the Tigers only announced 58.
Right.
Because they have 2 more spots. They're saving one, obviously, they hope to get Torkelson signed in the next, day or two or whatever. But Green is on that 58-man, if you will. So, they're going to get a look at him either in workouts here in Detroit, or obviously, I don't know if you've heard, but they're going to send a lot of the guys down to Toledo that obviously don't make the roster for the season once it starts, and the roster is going to be in place around July 23rd or 24th. But they're very high on Green. They're very, very high on him. Al Avila, the general manager, is very high on him. Obviously, he's shown some good limited power so far in the minor leagues, but I think his average was around 270, 275 or something like that. But he's got a ways to go to be able to win a position in the big leagues.
All right, I've got 2 key points, and then we'll wrap it up. First of all, let's just say, obviously, Major League Baseball, I don't think a lot of people think it's going to make it through the end anyhow. But can you imagine when some of the bigger players either test for COVID-19 or they drop out? Is that the doomsday thing that will ultimately be the killer for 2020? Because we haven't seen any major big tests right now. So consequently, everything seems to be on the uppity up. And I know another thing that I found out today, that MLB and MLBPA are still at odds at the players' vesting options and bonuses going into the year. But let's look about the big names potentially being affected by COVID, and then I'll wrap it up with an NBA point.
Well, I mean, the whether you're a big name or a small name or whatever, I mean, every team, has a chance still, unfortunately, to be affected by it. So, I mean, I think, obviously there's a long set of rules and guidelines that the leagues have come up with, the Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, the NFL. I mean, there's so many different rules and regulations. They're trying to do their best to obviously have the best testing and the best medical help for any player or team official that might somehow come in contact with the disease. So I'm saying that, whether, like I said, whether you're a big name or not, I mean, you don't wish that upon anybody, let alone your best friend and family members, of course, that they come down with it. So nobody's really sure of how it's still going to play out. I mean, with teams coming down with it on a limited basis, that's still not good. Because you look back on that kid from where? New Orleans? Was that the New Orleans player that came down with that in the NBA?
Oh, you're talking about out in the Jazz, Rudy Gobert?
Oh, the Utah Jazz. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
Well, once upon a time they were in the Netherlands.
and how that had such an immediate ripple effect was unbelievable.
Right.
I mean, the NBA went into shutdown mode, and then obviously, the NHL followed suit. But I'm just saying, I mean, we're like I said earlier, we're in uncharted waters here.
Oh yeah.
And if this hits these teams, I mean, there's no saying that Rob Manfred just might pull the plug on it. Right. Totally.
Well, amazingly enough, George, it gave me a great segue where unless David has something he wants to wrap up with in a moment, where, okay, we talked about Rudy Gobert, but now ironically, the NBA is in a situation where, like you said, Adam Silver is prepared to get this thing going. But just say hypothetically, we make it to the end of the road here with the NBA, but then either LeBron James or Giannis Antetokounmpo catches it, then you have a final series with one superstar without the other. How bizarre and crazy would that be? A Lakers and a Bucks finish without either or both superstars.
Oh, that would be crazy. I mean, if something like that happened. In fact, I don't even know if they could. I don't know if they could contend until the very end. If you're going to lose superstars like that,
yeah.
You could very well be eliminated, obviously, without that much talent on your bench, or coming off your bench, I should say. So that's a good point though that you bring up, because in that sense, guys that are out or have elected to go out, that's something that's going to affect the like I said, the durability of the team in the playoffs or in a short season situation. The NBA included, and hockey's the same way. But baseball, like you said earlier too, every game is so important, and if they lose some of their star players, again, if you're a Yankee team or if you're a Dodgers or the Astros or the Nationals, you'll probably be able to maybe recover better than, if you will, from Detroit or San Diego or Miami.
All right, well, I'll tell you, we've covered it pretty well. David, anything else you want to add before we have final thoughts?
Sure, I'll say this, that if something like that were to happen in the NBA, somehow the powers that be would find a way to end the season quickly. If they've taken so many steps to make sure that their biggest players are playing in the biggest games and it doesn't happen, that something will happen where the season does not end because of this. They're going to bank on the fact that people come to see Giannis and everybody else that's involved with it. It will come to an end. There won't be. I agree with you, Scott.
Yeah, that to me, when you start to, you have a lot of these guys that are backing out now. You can only imagine how many are going to back out.
Right.
And you have other reinforcements. A former Piston, Avery Bradley, is backing out with the Lakers. I think J.R. Smith is going to go ahead. And
there are baseball players that have said they're not going to play this year because of their family and safety. And we're going to see more of this.
Yeah, Ryan Zimmerman and Joe Ross.
Thank you. I couldn't think of his name.
Ryan Zimmerman and Joe Ross of the Nationals are the ones that I picked up on today. But yeah, that'll be another trend that we can focus on over the course of the next several weeks. But meanwhile, we're at the point of the broadcast where Mr. George Eichorn gets to promote a book, which I am proud to be in. Go ahead, George.
Oh yeah. I authored a book called The Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air. It's published by Arcadia Press. Arcadia is a company out of the Carolinas, and they do a lot of local books and that sort of thing. So you could always go to arcadiapress.com to find my book there, or I'm sorry, Arcadia Publishing. I stand corrected. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
It's arcadiapublishing.com, or else you could go to Amazon too, and there are copies that are available at Amazon. Again, it's called Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the Air, and yes, indeed, Scott Morgenroth is featured on one page with none other than Muhammad Ali.
And,
wow.
And Jimmy Connors, too, by the way. Got to give tennis a little bit of love.
And Jimmy Connors, too.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to get that now for confirmation, because if I don't see it didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, you will. Don't worry. So, George, let everybody else know how they get a hold of you. Sure, you have
Detroit Sports Broadcasters on the air. G. Eichorn at yahoo.com.
What about Twitter?
GEICHORN at yahoo.com.
And
Be happy to hear from you, and I will autograph any copy that you need of my book.
And you can also mention your Twitter handle as well if you'd like.
Oh, yes. D as in David, S as in Sam, B as in boy, A as in apple, DSBA2 is my Twitter handle. DSBA2, which has sentimental reasons.
For which I was a member of that, and you got me into that one. So, David, go ahead. Let George know before we get to my big list.
Yes, his big list. Yes, okay. I work for Fansided.com. I cover the Miami Marlins at Marlin Maniac. I also cover the Jacksonville Jaguars at Black and Teal. If you want to find me on Twitter, I'm at DM719907. Those numbers are significant, too, because they discuss my children. I haven't told many people that, but that has a special meaning to me. I'm also on the broadcast with 108 Stitches with Scott on the week. And here whenever he needs me because he's called me Mr. Versatility?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure I'll be hitting leadoff at some time real soon.
Well, don't forget the fact that you're also on the South Florida Tribune podcast with Ron Renzi.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, I moved David around quite a bit. And as for ourselves here, you can find us at Tribune South on Twitter, at Tribune South. Facebook, South Florida Tribune, like the page. Instagram, South Florida Tribune, like that page. We have a YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. In hockey terms, let's call that a hat trick. Okay, not the Gordie Howe hat trick, but a hat trick, all right? And got to get the Gordie Howe reference in there somehow. That was easy to do it. Website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You'll find stories from our media distribution partners, columnists, and you can also find all of our broadcasts on there as well under the WSAN drop-down. Email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Scott Morganroth, and you are listening to the Sports Exchange on the WSAN network. And you can also find these broadcasts wherever you can get your podcast. So great show tonight with you guys. All I can tell you, any closing thoughts, all I can tell you is I hope that everybody please be safe out there. Use common sense. Mask up. This thing isn't going away. I hate to say it. It looks like it's going to get worse. So any closing thoughts with you, George, first?
No, I just want to say thank you, Scott, and it's been a great pleasure meeting your fabulous Jacksonville connection here.
Thank you very much.
Terrific to talk and to chat about all the sports topics we covered, and looking forward to another show on your great network, Scott.
Well, don't worry. We got you booked once a week, Mr. Eichorn, so we're going to pair you with the best, and we're on a roll. So, David, some closing thoughts.
I echo what Scott says. This isn't going anywhere, guys. Please do whatever you can to protect yourself, your families, your friends. Please wear a mask. Follow directions when you're told by city officials and state government that this isn't getting any better. We need to protect ourselves. One person can affect many. I hope everybody is back again next week to hear us talk. And God bless you all.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a state that's being saddled with ridiculously high numbers. And once upon a time, the Metro Detroit area was getting it, but now we're getting hammered as well. So, meanwhile, on behalf of my dynamic duo, George Eichorn, my original co-host with the Sports Exchange, along with my current regular David, Mr. Versatility Levin. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us. Download and listen to this broadcast. I know you get lots of useful information out of it. So, guys, great job tonight. Here from Scott Morganroth on the Sports Exchange on the WSAN network.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, George. This was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Oh, you're welcome.
This was awesome.